Hey guys, I'm Texas Garden Guy, and this is the Garden Party. This is the Garden Party, and we want a garden party with you. We talk about the plants we grow and some things you might not know. The Garden Party. Everybody, welcome to the Garden Party. Phil, go ahead and introduce yourself.
What up, everyone? It's your favorite fig daddy, plant parent, and regular parent, Phil from Phil's Figs.
Exactly. Whatever Phil says, that's exactly. Phil's gonna get me with something on that one day.
I am. Be like, I'm Dustin Nowak.
um, as y'all heard before, I'm Dustin Nowak, Texas Garden Guy. Our next guest is a returning guest. Hasn't been on for a while. I know y'all missed him, just as I have. And we got Vikram Baliga, the plant professor. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Vikram Baliga. I'm the plant prof. I am currently antagonizing former child actor Josh Peck on social media because he ate a burrito wrong. And so I chose violence and ate a lemon with the rind and everything. And that'll make your mouth tingle a little bit. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah,
but
Vikram, you just set a tone. That's all. That's what you did. You set.
I did, and I don't know where to go from here. Right? Like, how do I escalate that?
You need to do a full-on instructional video on how to eat a burrito properly. And tag him in there.
That's a good one. Yeah, yes. That's a good one.
Well, and we have a new guest, a first-time guest. And Vikram, since you know him so well, I'll let you introduce him.
Yeah, this is Dr. Kevin Ong, the Texas plant doctor. He's a pathologist and a very good dude.
Sweet.
Hey, guys.
Go ahead and give everybody your background, Kevin, so they know they know you gave me kind of your backstory. You can kind of let everybody know what your background is and what you do.
Yeah, thanks, man. I'm trying to figure out right now, why did I say yes to doing this? But anyway, guys, I think I'm the oldest dude here. But I'm a professor in the associate department head at the Department of Plant Pathology and Microbiology at Texas A&M. And I direct our Texas Plant Disease Diagnostic Lab. So with this group here, I know Vikram, I think for a long time. I think I knew you when you were a student. And county agent before that and so on. But we have a lot of things in common. Namely, one is bow ties. I think I have the coolest stuff. But it's always good to get to hang out with some folks and talk plant disease stuff.
But yeah, I met Kevin at the Texas Tomato Lovers Conference up in Brenham. I did my presentation. It was mostly a Q&A. And I had never met Kevin, and people were asking some crazy questions. And I was like, where's Kevin at? I heard this guy is pretty smart. I was like, Kevin, what is that? And he's like, okay, I got you. And we hit it off pretty quick. And I was like, I got to go to A&M and go see this plant clinic, which in my mind, he said he's a diagnostician. So I assumed he was like the plant version of House, like Dr. House, and that that's right. When I think diagnostician, I've seen every single episode of House. And anybody who's seen every episode of House thinks they could probably diagnose people like illnesses.
It's always lupus.
And yes, it's never lupus. It's never lupus. But yeah, I got to go do a tour of basically like the CDC of, the plant, like Texas plants. And it was really cool getting to go up there and get a tour of the place.
You did realize I'm just as grumpy, if not grumpier than House, right?
without the opioid addiction.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
You did have a little limp. We did do the stairs a lot. You were kind of getting a little bit towards the end.
Just a note here. You guys realize I'm not as young as you guys, right?
I never would have guessed. No. I wanted to get you on because I get so many questions about plant diseases and like what's going on with this time of year is like what's going on with my tomatoes. And what was your presentation called? It's not a virus. It's not a disease. What was your presentation called?
I don't even remember right now what I called that presentation, but I think I remember it was something like the beauty of tomato diseases or something.
Yes. Yes, and he just had slide after slide, and it was like, this, it's not a virus. This, it's not a virus. You know, it
But
cracked
it's
me.
something wrong.
Yes, yes.
There's
Now,
something wrong. It's
But it
not a
looks
virus.
cool. It's not a
yes,
virus, but it looks cool.
yes, yeah, and we got to talking, and I was, I always tell people that like 90% of problems when it comes like the vegetable garden is how you're watering and how often you're watering. That's like so much of the problem.
Yeah, water flow for sure. I would find that with people with their fig cuttings on like drainage, so like soil porosity too plays a role because then you create environments for stagnant water to wreak havoc with all the things that grow in it, right?
Right.
One of the challenges here in Texas, you all know Texas is a big state, bunch of climatic conditions. The hard part
Yeah.
is so many parts of Texas, when it rains, it pours. When it's dry as a bone.
Yep.
The extremes. Plants don't like that, and the organisms, the pathogens, they have learned to take advantage of that. When the going is good, grow
Oh,
like nuts.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And so y'all, when I first talked to Kevin, I mentioned Vikram Baliga, and he was like, "Oh my God, that guy, that guy." So
That's the right answer.
and so when I was at the clinic, I started talking to Kevin about Vikram, and he was like, it's like he basically like saved for the podcast, like how y'all know each other. So how did y'all meet each other, and what is y'all's background together?
I don't
So
even
we
remember how long ago. So you'll have your memory hopefully is better.
I don't know that it is. It's been a long time. I'm trying to remember. So I was a student at A&M till 2010, and then I worked for the extension service for about 4 years, from like 2014 to 18. So I think I knew Kevin, probably not as well while I was a student, and then we worked together some when I was a county agent. I've never been down to see the clinic because it's on the other side of the universe for me in Texas. But yeah, I've known Kevin for quite a while.
No,
Yeah,
that's
lost track of time.
yeah. It was weird because like you would have a different experience at the clinic because Kevin was walking me around like I was like a VIP or something like that, and everybody kept asking like, "Oh, where's he from? Like, what university is he from? Like, where is he visiting from?" And I'm like, "Oh, I live south of Pearland. Like I need to I need to come up with a better response next time when I go up there."
No, next time we should just go, hey, yeah, I'm the Texas garden guy.
Oh
Just leave it.
God,
Yeah, buddy.
You're famous, Destin. Come
dude,
on.
You
Ke-
are,
Ke-
good sir.
Kevin is such a dad. He was doing the dad thing to me the whole time. He was like, "Do you know where he?" I must have handed out 50 stickers. I was like, Kevin was like, you follow him on Instagram, you follow him on TikTok," and I was like, "Oh my God, okay." I'm used to. I usually like to
Hey,
fly below the radar. It's fun though.
if you have it, you got to flaunt it, man.
I guess
Yeah.
so. I guess you're right. You are right. I should be a little more proud, I'm sure. Oh, I was going to tell everybody in the chat, if you're watching on Facebook, we have a good panel of people. We have what I think two of y'all are doctors, and Phil, are you a master's degree or are you a doctor
I have a
too?
master's degree.
Yeah, so we got
Paleoceanography.
we got like 20 years of knowledge here in the chat, not counting, none of that goes towards me. So like if y'all have any gardening questions, especially like disease questions, feel free to drop them down below. Um, let's see, I've got a question here. When you plant seeds in a starter pot and they start to grow, how do you then separate the seedlings into a bigger pot? I guess it's talking about um, thinning out your tomatoes. Do you cut your tomato seedlings, Phil? Do you cut your tomatoes or you pull them out?
I finger them apart and see which one takes, and see if I can get all three going. I roll the dice.
The terminal. I'm a snipper. I tried my best to be one seed, one seed, one hole in every cell.
Good on
But
you.
it's hard sometimes when you get like into like broccoli, all the brassicas, stuff like mint, especially mint. And I did a bunch of. I told myself I was like, I'm gonna go do some natives this year. I get so many like comments on videos, saying, "Why don't you grow more natives? Why don't you grow more natives?" Well, I was like, "Well, I will this year." So I bought a bunch of Texas red salvia seeds, and they are like the size of the tip of a
Yeah.
pinhead.
If
They're
you
so
could get
tiny.
one seed per thing, I was like,
Oh,
the only thing I could do one seed of is like zucchini because it's
yeah.
like a quarter inch long.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you never have to thin out your zucchini or cucumbers, but like tomatoes. So yeah, what I usually do is I don't pick out the tallest tomato seedling. I usually pick out like the thickest one, whichever one's the thickest. And I take a pair of scissors and I will either you can take the risk, whatever, like Phil was saying, you can try to get it out, or you can just snip it out right at the base and try not to damage the other one. But that's my thing that I do with that. Go ahead, Phil.
So I'll give you guys a trick.
Oh, Kevin's got a smart
Yeah.
answer.
Let me give you guys a trick. This is what I make the students do when they have to do experiments with tiny, tiny seeds.
Okay.
And usually they'll spread that out on like a cake pan with media. And when they got tiny little seedlings, maybe about an inch or so, I'll make them go in real carefully with a pencil tip, number 2 pencil or with a forceps, and slowly dig in and push out from the bottom, and then they can transplant. Now, if they're real gentle,
Oh man,
the seedling will survive. You know what we call that? Practice and patience.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I have a lot of
Exactly
respect for
right.
that. After my graduate research, I would look under the microscope for these microscopic fossils called foraminifera that you find in
Yes.
there's pelagic and benthic, and I had to collect a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
of those and put them into a mass spectrometer at the end of my research, and and hope that it worked. But the tediousness of science and making sure you can do that, and then what is it? Precision and accuracy, right? The
Correct.
relationship.
So, Phil, tidbit for you.
Yeah.
Now, Destin and Vikram doesn't know this, but when I was doing my master's, I actually got a master's of arts in biology from Temple University in Philly. But
Oh,
when I was
nice.
doing that, I was actually teaching marine ecology.
Oh, cool.
Benthic
So you know forams.
Oh yeah, I want to forget them.
There's going to be a lot. There's going to be a
Can't.
lot of big words used tonight. There's going to be a lot of big words, words you never
No.
heard before used
The
tonight.
things I'm trying to forget.
Yeah. Well, I was
Golly,
like, speaking of, you said Temple, I grew up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, in Amish country.
Oh yeah, my folks are still in the Norristown area.
During Norristown? Oh, man. That's
You know
awesome.
about the soils there, right? You can throw anything in the ground and it'll grow.
No, it's
Can't
and
really
like,
do
well,
that
I
in
know, like,
Texas.
and you have like, I went to high school in Pottstown, so there was like a lot of iron deposits there.
Yeah, because you got your
That's
you
really
got your
cool.
undergraduate from Penn, right, Kevin?
Penn State.
Yeah, that's cool.
Penn
Remember,
State,
the state
Happy
school,
Valley.
not the geek school.
Oh, okay.
One's Ivy League. Penn State's still a great school. Nittany
Viva la
Lions.
Penn State.
The
Yeah.
Nittany Lions. I always think it's like I was laughing at Vikram the first time because I just assumed that because he went to Texas Tech that he must have graduated from Texas Tech, But like and then Kevin was saying like, oh yeah, I went to Penn State and I got my doctorate from Clemson and all. Then I was like, oh wow, so like y'all just hired the best. I guess it makes sense. You hired the best candidate regardless of where they went to school.
No, see, the way I got my job is I just wouldn't leave. I was already here, and I refused to leave, and they were just like, "All right, I guess." So I'm still here.
That's
So one good thing about Vikram, you showed me the best place in that part of Texas with Rose Rosette, and by golly, that garden there, beautiful symptoms of cedar apple rust.
Oh yeah,
All from the cedar.
Wow.
Oh,
Is it cedar
Is it
apple?
still there?
Cedar apple rust?
yeah.
Mhm.
I've never
Is it
heard that
still
before.
there?
the cedar apple rust.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's not as bad because the cedars are dying, and so there's less material for it to grow on. But yeah, it's been bad, and we ended up pulling out most of those roses just because
Yeah.
it was so bad we couldn't, and we didn't want to spread it to the rest of campus and stuff like that. But we had something like 100 like heirloom varieties, beautiful varieties of roses, and every single one of them got rose rosette, and they all had to come out. It's a super sad.
Can y'all explain cedar apple rust? I've never heard of that before.
Oh, that's the common name of disease, a rust disease, which is caused by a fungus. So if you want big words, the Latin name of that fungus is Gymnosporangium virginiani. But it's called cedar apple rust because when they first studied it, guess what? They found it on cedar and they found it on apple.
You
And the
Oh,
don't
okay.
life
say.
cycle of it is, it stays for one part of its life on the cedar as a gall, and then it
Oh,
can infect the apple tree. Now, that is where it was found, but in Texas, we don't have a lot of apples. Where we see the problem on it is on pear trees.
oh, okay.
Hmm. And it's the
And
same
it can
species. It
host
just.
on.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go
I
ahead.
think
Yeah,
you're
there are
asking a
several
question too.
species of the Gymnosporangium. The most common one, cedar apple rust, is the Gymnosporangium virginiani. Yeah.
And it can host on agarita as well, can't it? The berberis or
Yes.
Mahonia now.
Well, but
Okay.
that's a different rust.
Oh, it's a different one.
It's a
Okay.
Okay.
different rust. Yeah.
And what is a common treatment for rust? Like I know a lot of people say copper fungicide. Like that's like a common like treatment people use. But what is like a is that cedar apple rust? Is it curable?
Not really, but you know what? There are like resistant varieties, cultivars of apple and resistant cultivars of pear. So you can actually plant those and they won't get the problem at all. But the easiest way to get rid of it is find the galls on the cedar and chop it off, prune it off.
Really?
Okay.
They're
Yeah.
the galls are wild looking too. They have these like teleal horns. They kind of look like yellow or orange like fingers that like hang down off of the cedar
What?
trees. They're crazy looking.
I'm gonna Google this later on. I'm
I'm gonna.
writing this
Yeah.
down.
You should
Well,
take
we
pictures of them because I think it's going to pop soon.
It probably will. And we've been warming up fast here. And I bet we'll start seeing it before too long. It's been kind of wet too, so.
Mm.
Oh, bonus.
Mhm.
wet, wet and warm. That's like I have fig rust that we have to battle, and Dustin, you have it too.
Yeah.
And
Well,
and that's why the copper fungicide plays a role in trying to. You're not getting it you're not eliminating the source, which sounds like you would do with the cedar, but
No, but when you are treating like for fig rust and all that, I guess the apple growers they could use copper and all that, but copper is not often very effective on at least the cedar apple rust.
got it.
okay. See, I don't treat for rust at all. I when it comes to my fig leaves, it's usually around the time that my leaves are dropping anyway. So they drop and they come back, and I don't really worry about it so much. It doesn't
Mm,
really
yeah.
it doesn't do much damage to the actual bark of the tree, from what I've
No,
seen.
and in most part of Texas, we don't have to worry because it's dry and hot enough that if it comes in, it'll come in and at the end of the season. So not something we need to be concerned about. But you out in North Carolina, oh yeah,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
don't take care of it, you're not going to get good fruit.
You are in trouble. No, yeah.
So,
And it
so
wasn't as bad. What's that?
no, I was gonna say so it can damage like your fall crops.
It hasn't damaged
The
my
what?
fall crops. It would cause leaf drop, but it can damage
Okay.
it for sure.
Okay. Okay. That's not bad.
See, up where
I
I
just
am in Texas, like. No, go ahead, Phil.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Phil.
Oh, I was just gonna say sometimes when what I did as a preventative, whatever leaves that dropped that were infected, I actually threw into a fire and I made a fire and burned them to try to eliminate the population of it a little bit, but we'll see.
Mm.
So was that good practice or was that therapy?
It was
It's like
cathartic
the
for
fig
sure.
graveyard.
Little bit of
Yeah, my
both.
fig cutting graveyard. Oh, say la
Yeah,
vie.
he puts his fig cuttings, dude. So I had been telling people for a long time to like put when they propagate like their fig cutting to make sure to put it in right side up. And Phil actually did one upside down, and
I
it's
did.
still propagated. It's still
It
that's so
oriented itself.
hilarious.
It's like it does this nice little U shape now. And it's starting to point upwards. But I put it on its head and I said, "Deal with it," because I saw I did it. I was like, "Whoops!" Well, we're rolling with it. So, um,
Dude, you should
because
try to you should do it in a hanging basket and try to grow an upside down fig tree in a hanging basket, like a 5-gallon bucket, and hang it from somewhere.
there is a picture of a fig tree growing out a cliffside in Italy. just like hanging out the cliff, like down and up, kind of like this outward thing, and it just kind of hangs there. So like that on like a mega scale, and it
Yeah,
does it. Nature finds a way. Thanks,
you
Jeff
should
Goldblum.
totally try to do a. You should try to do a hanging fig. You should try it.
I'm gonna go for
I
it.
think if you Google around, I seem to remember a number of years ago, there was some folks that were growing different things in a inverted hanging basket type system. I can remember like what, tomatoes or something like that,
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
upside down.
yeah, tomatoes and peppers. I've even seen squash. Like and you hang it and then you trellis them. I'll probably try tomatoes again this year. You can like I remember back in like the early 2000s, late 90s, it was like a fad thing to grow your tomatoes in those bags upside down on your porch. And so I did a video last year and it did so well until my hanging basket fell off and
Oh
just killed the tomato like almost immediately. So
That'll do it. Yeah, that'll do it.
that was a bummer. I've got some questions over in the chat. Here we go. Louis Chamorro from Heirloom Souls. I can't roll my R's, dude. Gentlemen, I attempted to grow cucamelon last summer. I might planted too late and the heat might have harmed the plant. I noticed a powdery mildew. When is a good time to plant cucamelon from seed, and what should I do if the white powdery for the white powdery mildew? So, has anyone grown cucamelons before? I have.
Mm-mm.
So cucamelons are the little they call them cucamelons or sour Mexican gherkins. They're little cucumbers. I'm sure they're not even like a real cucumber, but they grow about the size of a grape. They're really cute and really delicious. I've made pickles out of them. They're really good. Problem is, usually they vine like crazy, and you can't find them. You have to search to try to find them. But the cucumber seeds take forever to germinate. They probably take because a regular cucumber takes like less than a week to germinate. The cucamelons sometimes can take like 3 weeks to germinate. So be patient. You can start them now. And then for powdery mildew, I do my neem oil. I do neem oil once a week. That's just me because I've got a ton of stuff going on. But I have heard there's other options for powdery mildew, and there's some other stuff becoming more popular, right, Kevin? Some different things.
There's some, if you want to go the natural way, for the longest time, one of those home remedies has been, what is it, potassium bicarbonate
Hmm.
solution
Mm-hmm.
of that. I don't remember what, you might have to Google to see what percentage it is. But really, what that works is like a desiccant. So powdery mildew so the cocoa melon, is that a cucurbit?
Hmm.
Yes, yes, it's a really
Yep.
tiny one.
So there are a number of cucurbids that just are not resistant at all to powdery mildew, and if you guys are interested, powdery mildew is a common name and caused by a fungus, and there are 8 different genera. So
Oh,
so
really?
of fungus that actually produce symptoms that is called powdery mildew. So that the concept of using like the potassium bicarbonate is really like a desiccant to try and keep things a little bit drier so that the spores won't be able to germinate and get whole. I think there are also commercial products, right? Some form of a different form of bicarbonate. What was one of it? Is it like C's or something like that? I don't remember right now.
I don't remember the trade name, but I think it is a bicarbonate for sure.
Yeah.
Is bicarbonate like that would be like baking soda? Is that bicarbonate?
Yeah, it's along that same lines.
Okay. I got you. Yeah, I've just always used neem oil, and because I'm already going for like the vine borers and certain things,
Yeah.
the one I use is Bonide Neem Max. So it's like a fungicide and nematicide, a couple other. It's a 4-in-1, so it kind of works for a couple different things. So that's what I use, but that's just what I've always done. And when people ask me about it, that's what I say. But I have done videos on like old wives' tales about
Mhm.
using milk. I've done a video using milk. So if you have like an expired, gallon of milk, half gallon of milk, you do 1 part water, 1 part milk, mix them together, and it's supposed to work as a powdery mildew. And I don't know if it's true or not. I don't know. I don't know if that would work or not, but it was like an old wives' tale, and I
Well,
definitely I
there
did a
is some
video on it.
science behind that. You know that, right? There's some science behind that. So
Right.
those whole milk, there is some level of fat in there. So it acts like the neem oil in terms of mode of action. Neem oil is an oil. So even a
Oh.
light horticultural oil actually will work because it just disrupt adhesion of the spore to the leaf itself. But the funny thing that when you mention milk, that mixture of milk spray on the plants actually works well for potential infection of viruses.
Hmm.
Now,
Really?
Really?
if that virus is one that kind of gets deposited on the surface that needs a wound to get in, it interacts with that protein molecules from the milk. So think about, the virus, and then those
Hmm.
protein molecules like balloons. You stick balloons all over that virus particle, it basically activates it, encapsulates it. So that's kind of a
Wow.
picture to draw in your head, right?
Oh.
But unfortunately, a lot of viruses are transmitted by insects.
I was gonna
So they
say, like,
bypass that. They just inject it right in.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
that's the problem
and
with fig mosaic virus with figs is that it just gets transferred by the spider mites, and you're like,
Yeah.
ah. Or you try to do as much cleaning as you can with your clippers and let them in, and they just do it for you.
let's see. I got a comment over here. I had an Arkansas's black apple, and out of nowhere, all the leaves fell off and dried up immediately. This happened to the tree and the one next to it. Would that be fire blight?
That would be my guess.
It sounds like fire blight. From what I've seen, the only way to like combat fire blight is when you catch it infected, prune it away immediately.
Sanitation.
That's the only with sanitary. You got to decontaminate your tools and everything too. But like to do pruning to get that fire blight away, that's the only thing I could think of.
Well, we have a lot of fire blight in
But
Texas.
yeah, but is this the Arkansas? What is it?
She said
Black
Arkansas
apple?
black. Yes.
So
Whoever's
if
phone
I'm not
is
mistaken,
beeping.
I think the Arkansas black apple is supposed to be resistant to fire blight.
Oh, interesting.
Oh,
I
really?
thought it is, but need to double check on that because that's the one out of Arkansas and the low chill, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, so
Yeah.
this would be a good question. This would be a good time to bring it up. So Kevin runs he's the director of the the Texas Plant Clinic. If you go to Instagram, it's TX Plant Clinic. And if you have like questions or you have some issues with the plant, you can go to the DM. I think there's a link to like submit
Well,
things, and
yeah,
it's
but
hard. The volume of
we're
stuff
not
getting
on the
in.
DM as much, but I think that's a email address that you can send to, and we'll try and get back as soon as we can. Give it
Yeah.
a week.
But if you are having issues like something like that and you don't know what it is, it's a good idea to contact. This is one thing we talked about, Kevin, that I didn't know up until we talked to was that every county in Texas has an ag extension agent. You were saying that some have a horticultural agent, some have like a regular agriculture, like for animals and ag, and then some have both, depending on the size of the county. And that would be a good contact for this person if they can find their local ag extension, make an appointment with them to do something with that as well.
And I'll jump. North Carolina does the
Absolutely.
same thing
Yeah,
Yeah.
with the ag extension.
And so, Phil, so I got a chance when Destin was here to share with him at least some history about extension.
please.
So
Oh,
that was a fun thing
yeah.
that goes back all the way to Abraham Lincoln's time. So that's with the land grant schools and all that. But hey, if you are in Texas, if you type in extension or AgriLife extension in Texas, it'll pull up the website and you can go there and find your county, and it'll have a listing of the folks that are in the county, or at least a number to that office that you can reach out to.
Absolutely.
And Vikram, where were you at when you
I,
were
I was here in Lubbock
okay?
for 4 years, and I tell you, like I got a lot of really tough questions that I think I would send out for help. Like I have no idea what this is. It's funny because as a county agent, you actually just get really good at Googling stuff. Like you learn how to use Google because people will call you on the phone and like you'll be on the phone with some homeowner and they really expect you to know stuff. And it may be the most obscure, like whatever. And so like I'd put them on my, I'd be, oh, let me check through my notes, and I'm really just Googling stuff, looking at university websites as
I do
fast
it
as
all
I
the
can.
time, dude. I do that all the time when people ask me questions.
Just like, I got one so one time, I don't know if I've told this story. I got a letter in the mail, and at the county office. And I think it was sent by an older gentleman, or and it was just like this white envelope, had a letter in it, and what felt like a whole bunch of like powder down in the bottom of it. I'm like we were on the same floor as the like narcotics folks at the county office. I was like, do I need to like walk this over and like have them take a look at this?
Oh gosh.
So I open it up, and there's a sheet of paper with a twig taped to it. And it said, can you help tell me what's wrong with my tree? And the powder was all the leaves that had been on this twig that had dried up and crumbled up into the bottom of this envelope while it was like in the mail. And I was just like, so luckily they left a number. So I was able to like call and talk to this person and be like, can you maybe like send me a picture, or, describe it to me, like, I got your sample, and it was a really good sample. I just need a little more information.
Why'd you tell him it was a good sample?
Well, yeah. they were older.
It was an older person.
I was just trying to be nice.
I'm being facetious.
and in my head though, I'm like, what's wrong with it is you keep pulling all the leaves off of it and mailing them to people, and like. But all that to say, like, we got some funny stuff as county agents, and I know they still do, but like that they're there to help. Like, and if you have a local county office or even a regional office, there's 12 like big district centers around the state, district offices, and send them your stuff, send them emails, give them a phone call, drop in if you're local. It's really a great service.
Yeah, I got to drop in, and I was like, I was asking Kevin, I was like, say, how many people work here? And he was like, oh, like 20 something. And I was like, that's because he was telling me like who all sends them samples to get tested. I was like, there's not enough people here. Like, that is so wild. Like it's undermanned and like underfunded and all this stuff. It's so wild.
Hey, when did I say 20? If you would talk about the plant clinic, I think it was what, 3, 4?
Oh no. We were walking through the new building. I was like, how many people work here? You're like, oh, like 22. Oh. And I was like, 22?
That was the one. How many faculty members we had in the Department of Plant Pathology and Microbiology? That was it. Now I remember.
Oh,
so,
okay.
It was 22, and we are located all around the state.
That's nuts.
The state.
Yeah.
That, for as big as Texas is, that's not enough people. It didn't seem like enough.
So when you think about extension, plant pathologists, we got 7 located throughout the state. We got what? 1. Yeah, 2 people equivalent to 1 FTE up in Amarillo. And then we got 1 in Uvalde, 1 in Westlaco, and hopefully soon 1 in Lubbock. Hooray!
Hopefully,
and,
yeah.
we get I think 2 others and myself in College Station, and the ones in College Station get the dubious honor of being always statewide. So
wow.
So Dr. Tom Isakid, our cotton guy, he make regular trips out to El Paso driving.
That's nuts.
Hey Phil, that's about a 10 to 12 hour drive.
I was going to say it's probably from here in Wilmington, North Carolina, to my parents' house in Lancaster, Pennsylvania is 10 hours. So that's how many states? Wow. You're just all in Texas. Like, my head is like, what is happening? New England, forget about it. You got 4 states in 4 hours, but
in Canada.
Yeah. Well, and I saw like the people working in your lab. Hannah was really cool. Some of the girls, that was really great meeting them. And we were talking about some of the, y'all get all the sample. Y'all get like a lot of samples in from the Texas Department of Agricultural as well. And so they were talking about like all the samples, showing me how they intake all the samples and how they test them and all. And that was so neat. But I was like, there's still only like 5 people in this lab. I was like, that is not enough people. It's so wild.
I got a good group of folks right now. Hannah is my new head diagnostician, running the day-to-day operation there. But we do what we do with what we got.
Yeah, and I was asking her what when I was there, they were talking about oak wilt.
Mm.
And I got two oak trees, but I probably only pay attention to my oak trees when they slap me in the face when I'm mowing the front yard. That's pretty much the only time I pay attention. But I know people like my dad who every time they drive past an oak tree, like, oh, they got that fuzz on it. It's gonna kill it. Every time my dad comes to my house, he sees the lichens growing on the side, and he goes, "You need to get some Consan 20 and spray that tree, or that moss is gonna kill the tree." And I was like, "No, I looked it up. You're wrong." But every time he
Yeah.
shows up, he says the same. He says the same thing. He says the same thing every single time. Uh, but after talking to Hannah, she was like, "Yeah, that is true for the most part, but." A severe lichen infestation can be an indicator of something else going wrong,
Right.
which was interesting. So I didn't know that.
Yeah, so there are a bunch of things. Lichen is one of them. Is what we call an indicator. So if you want to think about it, the best way to kind of get a grasp of it is if the bark gets soft or get easier for something else to use it as a structural support, then that's going to happen. So if you got a lot of lichens on it, lichens are not parasitic. But if they can grow on it, that tells you that something is wrong with that tree. Around Central Texas, the ball moss, Tilentia,
Mm-hmm.
ball moss is an epiphyte, not a
Hmm.
parasite. But I have the hardest time convince some folks that it is not a parasite. They keep saying, "Well, the ball moss is killing my tree," and I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. The ball moss is there because your tree is already dying."
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
it's not it's not killing your tree. Your tree is dying regardless.
And it just
Right.
it happens to hang out too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it hang out and look funky. And the worst thing is this too. The last few years in Texas, we had such crazy weather, which have been doing a number on trees, and so we get a lot of situation with what is commonly known as hypoxylin canker. So that's a fungus. I think the new name is Bixobignia or something like that. And people keep saying, "Hey, is hypoxylin killing my tree?" Well, technically, yeah, but they are weak pathogen, weak parasite.
Mm.
They come in when the tree is already on the way out, and so they
Mm.
colonize it, and they do the last bit of it. Think of them as the little things that come in and hammer in that last hit on that nail in the coffin. But because they
Got it.
did that, the last one in place, people think they killed the tree. Well, technically they did, but they didn't make that tree
Yeah.
suffer or get to the point of death. So how do you do
Well,
that? So we like to say it's
yeah.
an indicator. I like to say it's an indicator. If you see hypoxylin obviously and a lot on the tree, nope, you not a good chance to save the tree. Take your losses.
Yeah.
Well, and I tell people a lot, like trees take a long, like, because I probably got,
Yeah.
and I still get more tree questions than anything else. What's wrong with my tree? Well, and my first question was, have you watered your tree? Especially where I live, it's so dry. Like, water your trees.
Oh,
You got to water your trees.
down here
Yeah.
is down here. It's you watered your tree too much.
Yeah, stop watering your tree.
Yes.
But trees take a long time to die. Like in general, unless it's something like sudden oak decline or a few others, like trees take a long time to die. And then they just like accumulate this complex of diseases and insects and all kinds of things because they're out in nature they would start supporting other parts of the ecosystem and all this stuff starts building up. And
Yeah.
you mentioned oak wilt earlier, and Phil, I don't know if that's an issue where you are, but in Texas that's killed hundreds of millions of oaks across the state. It's a big problem.
Yeah. And it's
Oh,
mostly on live oaks, right?
Live oaks and red oaks.
Okay.
got it.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of people don't realize, like my grandpa's got an ash tree. They don't live, that long. Like they live maybe 30 years or so. Some people just don't realize that some trees just don't live forever.
Right.
And so there's that as well. I got a really good question here, and I know it's a good question because they got some words I've never heard of before. So this would be a good one for you. So Andy McAnderson, which that's a fake name. Uh, uh,
Bodie McBoatface.
yeah.
Boat face, yeah.
It says, "What's the best way to deal with shot hole disease and plum curculio on peach trees?" I've never heard of
So
either one.
I don't know.
two different things. Shot hole disease. That's not a real name, by the way.
Well, you have to
Um,
explain what it is too, like what it
okay, so
is.
shot hole is actually a common description. So there's a disease that happened on peaches or stone fruits that basically start as a spot on the leaves, and eventually that spot dries out and pops out. So it looks like somebody took a shotgun to those leaves.
Ooh,
Okay.
wow,
So,
that's crazy.
and that is actually caused by bacteria. So the actual thing, if you want to look it up, you can put shot hole. What is it? Shot hole symptoms on bacterial spot of stone fruit. Bacterial spot of stone fruit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, plum cucullio is an insect, and they can do a number on peach tips and so on, and basically do a number on small fruits if they start feeding on it.
Okay. And what would
Yeah.
be like what would be treatments for any of this? Is any of
So
this treatable?
again, depending on where you are, what it is. So with bacterial spot, um, conditions is if it's wet, humid, and all that, that it's going to be worse. And so in about in our peach growing areas in East Texas and Central Texas, it's mostly a problem in East Texas because it's more humid and so on. But there's a tendency of it to come in later part of the season after fruiting. If it does come in and you have issues early on, or historically have that, we usually tell the growers to treat it preventatively. And as
Andy
it
Andy said he's in Conroe.
in Conroe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the probably if you know they come in early, you know what? Usually after flowering and after small fruits are formed, but before it gets larger, you do want to protect those leaves because remember, a healthy leaves is going to make the food that is going to be stored in that fruit to give you nice fruit. So if this is a homeowner type situation, something like a copper fungicide would also have bactericidal activity.
Mm-hmm.
So it
Okay.
has to be used in a preventative fashion. So put it
C-
out
c-
there before it actually happens.
Now I know there's things like dormant oils and stuff like that. Will stuff like that help prevent too before it starts sprouting, before it starts
You
budding?
can use some dormant oils, but that is mostly helping the. But you might want to mix it with the copper so it actually sticks better. But dormant oil alone does not really stop the bacterial.
Yeah, I was just I was thinking as a preventative, just as a general preventative.
It
It can
doesn't
help.
really.
Okay.
Yeah,
No
it can
problem.
help with your insect problems,
That's right.
especially in stone fruits. A lot of the insects, from Asian fruit moth to the cucurleo and a few others, they'll at different life stages they can overwinter in the leaf litter on the ground,
Mhm.
plant litter on the ground, but they'll also in some cases winter in cracks in the bark. They'll crawl up in there and winter
Okay.
there. So if you do a couple of dormant oil treatments before the tree wakes up in the spring, you can catch a lot of those crawlers and essentially suffocate them in like where they're hiding.
Okay.
And I think some of the recommendations I've seen in peaches specifically is it'll. So I'm up here in Lubbock, so our times are going to be different. But 2 to 3 weeks before bud break, start with some treatments. Treat it every 10 to 14 days, up through. Really the beginning of fruit set, and then usually you can knock down some of those problems. And I know we've had issues with shot hole up here,
And
and
y'all's tiny orchard, right?
yeah, in my tiny microscopic little orchard, and it gets the problem is like it depletes photosynthetic capacity, but it also can get on the fruit, and the fruit's still edible, but you'll see spots on it. You get a little sap forming on the fruit,
Okay.
which people don't love to buy. I can tell you from
Yeah.
experience. If it tastes the same, you can just cut those portions off and it's fine. Sometimes you get developmental problems, but yeah, a dormant treatment sometimes for us, we tend to see it. I've seen more in the between bud break and fruit set. We see it kind of early, and then we're so hot and dry in the summer that
It's not a
you know,
problem for y'all.
not as big of a problem.
And then
But you also have to be a little bit careful with some of those copper fungicides at after bud break because they are phytotoxic as well at high rates. So if you spray them too heavy, you can knock leaves and buds and stuff off. So you have to be kind of careful with it.
Yes.
get your dilution rates right, and then yeah.
Make sure you read the label well. And if you ever spray that thing at bud break and flowering, and your flowers look blue, you overdid it.
Hmm.
Oh, it's too much.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
Really? Wow.
yeah, it'll
When you see
accumulate.
blue, uh-oh.
I was gonna say it sounds like oxidation of the copper.
No, no, the flowers, the blooms, that white blooms pick up the coloration. And
Yeah.
so when you
Oh,
see
yeah.
that, you go like, uh-oh, 2 days later, the petals start to drop and turn brown, and you go,
Oh
what in the
man.
world
Oh man.
happened?
Dun, dun, dun.
This is
Yeah.
sort of anecdotal, but my peach orchard is actually right next to a pecan orchard. It's just across the street, and we'll actually see flower drops sometimes when they go out and spray chelated zinc
Mhm.
in the spring for the same reason. You get that sort of metal toxicity in the flowers, and it's usually not enough to knock them all off, but sometimes it does a little thinning for me, and I'm not mad at it because thinning peach blossoms is a pain in the butt. Um, but yeah, so you just need to be like conscious of the environment around you
Yeah.
too, and some of those things can cause ecological problems too if you're not careful. So yeah, like Kevin said, like that label is sort of your contract and they're your
Yeah.
instructions. You should be reading the label and
Well,
applying appropriately.
and that's why I always tell people, like when they ask me like, "Hey, what do you spray for this?" I tell them, "Hey, I use cold pressed neem oil. This is the brand I use, and I follow the directions to a T." Because I don't know what brand they're gonna go out and get. So if I tell them 2 tablespoons per gallon on this brand, it won't be the same on that brand. So I always emphasize read the label on this stuff because you will screw up if you just freehand stuff.
So
You
I'm
know.
I'm I'm gonna say this too. Regardless of if you use a natural product or a synthetic product, read the label carefully because research has been done to make sure that they provide instruction on a safe level to use. And if you use that correctly, it can be very effective. I think you need to put away from your mind that more is better because in
Mm.
this situation, more is not always better.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially with fertilizer. That same thing with
Oh,
fertilizer.
yeah.
Hmm.
You can definitely over fertilize your plants. Absolutely. Well, I couldn't let this conversation end without bringing up the groundbreaking gardening method of electroculture. And I was wondering, since you're an ag extension agent, I have it's not even really spring yet, and I've already had several messages and comments about electroculture, and I was like, I've got you know I got this is a house of science here, and I want to get y'all's opinion. Kevin, have you heard
No,
of
you
electroculture?
you have to catch me up on speed on that one because I hope it's not what I think it is.
It's what you think it is,
I
buddy.
think I
That's
think
what you
you
think. Yeah.
Oh no,
Yeah,
Vikram
it's what you.
no.
Vikram explain electroculture.
So the basics of it, and I'm going to use some words that you're going to like here. It's harnessing latent energies and ethereal currents by putting like copper rods in your garden or sometimes they literally run an electric current through the soil.
So it
Um,
is what I think it
it's
is.
exactly what you think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Kevin?
Okay, I'm gonna be really nice here. Did you realize that sometimes it can work under the right conditions?
Yes.
Because if you think about it, the soil is a chemistry lab.
Hmm.
And when you put electric charges, electrons in it, you're going to do some funky things to that. And it is possible that you have a situation where the additions of electrons may result in certain chemicals in that soil to
Yeah.
transform into a form that becomes plant available.
Are you supporting
So you're
electric
saying,
culture
okay,
here, Kevin?
so you can
I'm
ionize the
saying
soil for bioavailability.
yes. That's the
Okay.
big words. I'm so proud of you, Phil.
Feels
Oh,
smart.
thank you.
So short of it is, yeah, is it possible? Yeah, it is possible. Is
Oh my
it
god.
plausible? Is it consistent? I don't think
Yes.
there's any research that's shown that it is consistent, that you can consistently reproduce something like this. So from the science perspective, if you cannot reproduce it, consistently, then it's not something that you would say it would work. So
No.
I use it in terms of like when we talk about diseases and treatments, and we might say, okay, this thing works, but it has an error rate of 40%. So it says 40% of the time it's not going to work. Well, hey, do you want to tell a farmer to use that? Or even better still, in the clinic, oak wilt is one of them. There is a PCR tests out there, which basically can we can do the test for oak wilt detection in about a week or 3 days to a week, rather than the 21 days that we need right now by growing it out. But why don't we do it? It's a what is it? It's a 30%, 27%, I think, error rate that we're getting. So I'm
Mm,
not comfortable with telling somebody, hey, you got oak wilt, and there's potential that 27% of the time I'm wrong. I think I'm more
right.
comfortable with at the very least a 10% error rate. So
Yeah.
this is one of those situations where you say electro, hey, if you have the money and you have the craziness to want to do this, go ahead and try it. It might work.
Well,
And if
and
it don't think that it'll work someplace else.
well, and most people are not putting an electric current. Like when most people are wrapping copper wires around bamboo poles and sticking them in their garden. And so
Mm.
Yeah, and that's not.
that's the majority. What we're I could see where actually running an electric current could maybe do something, maybe even pests, like some sort of pest control sorts as well. But yeah, I get a lot of questions, and it's one of those new fad things.
Uh,
Like you get the people that just swear by certain things. Like the eggshells in the garden. Is putting eggshells in the garden going to hurt anything? No. But is it going to solve your blossom end rot tomorrow? No. I mean, it's not gonna do that. So I mean, but it's not hurting anything. So I mean, the same thing with the copper. It's not hurting anything. I mean, the placebo effect alone, if you got the money, I work with electricity, so I know how expensive copper is. So if you got the money to do it, go ahead.
Have
My
fun. Yeah.
my joke was I made a meme that said if electroculture was real, this is what every farm in the United States would look like, and I had these giant copper Tesla rods out in these cornfields out in the middle of Kansas. So I don't know. I don't
People
know.
did not like that one. People were mad at you about that one.
I had
they
some
were.
people that were very upset with me
Your
about it.
your comments were wild for a while.
I got some real bad, but you're right. You're right though, Kevin. That's a really good way to think about it. You should never tell anybody 100% that won't work. I haven't done the studies, I haven't done the research, but anecdotally, I would say it's probably gonna have like a placebo effect. You know,
Probably. And remember, the placebo effect is on the human, not the plant.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
It's
for sure.
working.
but you'll feel better about
Okay.
it.
Yeah. Well, and every comment I got was like, "Well, I can run copper wires out in my garden," and they're like, "No, you got to read the book, and you got to do it exactly this way, pointing south."
I was going to say
Um,
there's probably all these different variables that apply to it, and like how
yeah,
grounded your soil, like what you're gardening and how grounded it is in the greater electromagnetic sphere. I guess, but I
right.
don't know. I haven't tried it.
No, I like the way Kevin thinks about
Hmm.
answers questions like that, because I did a lot of videos in the beginning of like old wives' tale videos, like the orange peels in the garden, the coffee in the garden, the milk in the garden, and most of it's been debunked, like the coffee thing. Does coffee acidify your soil? Maybe if you planted your azaleas in 100% coffee, it would acidify them, but most of the acid gets out of the coffee grounds in the actual brewing process. But it's not hurting anything. putting a couple
Right.
pounds in the garden isn't hurting anything.
My biggest thing is like when you fertilize, like how bioavailable is that fertilizer to the plants? Like how much, what percentage of that is being taken up, and what is needed in the soil to create an environment where you're maximizing the quantity of nutrients being taken up by the plant. And I feel like recently I've been listening a lot about fungus playing that role in doing that for plants.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So
I'm
so
curious on how
Destin
that
got to
works for my
meet.
figs.
Yeah. So Destin got to meet one of our newest faculty member who's a microbiome person, and you guys talked a little bit about that, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah, the fungi.
Oh, cool.
We were talking about. What was it? Growing truffles? Was it
Yeah.
truffle growing? Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
he's truffle. I guess he studied in France and was talking about truffles and stuff. And I was like, that sounds so interesting. I'd like to know more about that. It's really neat. You were talking about the bioavailability. I tell people this because of some of the research I've done. But people ask me about the liquid fertilizer versus the pelleted fertilizer or the granules. Some of the studies I've seen is that uh, plants can actually absorb more micronutrients through the foliar feeding than through the ground. Is there some science to that?
Yeah.
There
So
is. Yeah, go ahead,
So,
Kevin.
yeah, so that's always about formulation. So you know that there are fertilizers that are liquid that you pour as a drench for absorption. Some of this liquid fertilizer is formulated in such a way that some plants, well, many plants, it will uptake it through the foliage, and then you got the pelleted form, which are some are quick release, so they get
Mhm.
in there, and the microbial effect will break it down to a form that the plants can pick up, or they're slow release, formulated in different ways that it slowly lets go of some of those nutrients. So so
Right.
so a lot of it is, in the fertilizer business, you got all this various things that can be done to it to make it when it's available in the soil. Now, the whole concept of what's available to the plant, sometimes it's there and the plant can pick it up. I think some of you have heard of the mycorrhizae type effect. So this
Right.
are what is it, symbiont type situations where that beneficial fungus is basically acquiring those nutrients and transferring it to the plant, and then it's getting some benefit from the plant in terms of the sugars from the plant. So there's biological basis to some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, Kevin said it right that it depends so much on what you're applying and where you're applying it. So I'll give you an example. Up here where I am, we have very high pH soils, right? Most of
Yeah.
them are 7.5, 8 plus in some cases. Very high calcium heavy soils. So things like zinc and manganese and magnesium and iron get bound up to those soil particles. And so we have plenty of iron in the soil. And in fact, if you drive outside of Lubbock, you see all these like red orange soils, which is just the soil rusting, essentially, all
Mhm.
the iron in there rusting. But it's not plant available because it's so like tightly adsorbed to the soil particles. So in those cases, yeah, foliar feeds of some of our metal nutrients become essential, because if you put it in the soil, the plant can't get to it unless it's a very specific, you know, again, formulation of that. So you see again in pecan orchards, they are chronically zinc deficient, iron deficient, and you'll see them foliar feeding because it doesn't work well through the soil. So yeah, just like Kevin said, it's so much regional, uh, climate related, weather related, soil related, plant related. I think the safe answer in science all the time is it depends. I don't know, it depends. Uh,
So many
people
factors.
love that, but it is complicated, and I think that it kind of needs to be, and we need to understand some of the nuance of it too.
Yeah, I think of it like
Absolutely.
when you say you're going to go on a diet and you go like to a nutrient hut or whatever it's called, and you go in and you get like a bunch of vitamins, and like you take a bunch of vitamins and you're like, yeah, I need to take this and that and that, and what you're really like, you're taking all the like 10, 12 vitamins, and what you're really doing is buying really expensive urine, because your body's not absorbing
Yeah.
like hardly any of that. It's just going right through the body. And so sometimes that can happen with fertilizer, It's like you were saying, bioavailability.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, don't forget about timing too. Fertilizing when the plant is dormant, it's
Yeah. I had
Better
I
hope
had
it's slow
heard someone.
release.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, somebody was telling me that if you wanted to go ahead and fertilize some of your stuff, now would be okay because everything's about to start waking up to go ahead and
Yeah.
put out some of your granulated stuff so that whenever it starts to break bud, it's already available. So now would be a good time. Someone was asking me about their citrus today. Hey, is now a good time to start? Well, I never I keep my stuff in my greenhouse, so I never really stop fertilizing it. Like really, they're producing calamundins in my greenhouse right now. Um, I love them, so I never stopped. But yeah, and if you're gonna want to start your apples and your peaches and everything, you can go ahead and start now as well. Oh my goodness. Well, I really appreciate all y'all coming on tonight. We're just past an hour.
Oh,
But I'm telling you, the more fun we have, the faster these podcasts go.
yeah.
And and we definitely got to have Kevin back on and Vikram. I like Kevin and Vikram together because they're like peanut butter and jelly.
It's the bow ties.
It's
bow
I,
tie.
Yeah. Oh
we,
man, peanut butter and jelly bow ties
we'll
be killing me. That'd be sick.
oh my
But
goodness.
I had a virus question though, because I learned last night we
Yeah,
had
go ahead.
the hobby greenhouse club that I'm president of here in Wilmington. Um, we had the Tidewater Camellia Club come over and present, and they talked about variegation of camellias created by viruses and how he would, when he would graft, he would almost like ping it. Now, is that correct? And I don't know anything. He just mentioned it. I didn't get to ask questions on it because they moved on to like 400 varieties of camellia, but I didn't know how that affects it, how viruses can create that variegation.
So that whole work of using viruses for, how would I put it, unique phenotypes,
Yeah.
it's not new. I mean, the Dutch did that with bulbs, with tulips,
Okay.
Right.
and there are rules and regulations that govern the importation of that plant material. And one of it
Right.
is it has to be tested to show that the inclusion of that virus is stable and it's not going to get out and cause problems elsewhere.
Mm,
So yeah, breeders have used viruses as a tool to get all those funky traits. Now, this is a trade-off though. Some viruses, create these problems, and it may not have a huge impact on the health of the plant. So then you can get away with a plant with funky symptoms and relatively healthy. The bad part is when you actually infect that plant, you get the funky symptoms, but at the same time, there's a huge fitness cost. So now you got a weakened plant that is more susceptible to a bunch of other things.
yeah.
So has it
Yeah.
been used as a tool to get cool traits? Absolutely. We are humans. We're gonna use every darn thing to
Yeah.
do that. And just for history, people have done chemical mutagenesis. That's a huge word. Basically
Yeah.
using chemicals that can mutate certain genetic materials. Why? Because we want that cool, funky symptoms
X-Men, dude.
or
Or like
traits.
four turtles that know, kung fu.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
And I will be willing to bet that at some point somebody probably also electroshock plants to get funky symptoms.
Oh my god. So you may have just answered my question. And so, is there such thing as a good virus, a good virus? So I guess it's really just you have to take the good with the bad sometimes. Sometimes
Well, when you ask that question, I'm going to ask you: are they good humans?
yeah, it's all
And
perception.
are they bad humans? And what it is. And if you remember, when you were on the third floor, remember we walked by the labs that were next to mine, the Center for Phage Technology. Remember, they were using viruses to kill bad bacteria.
Oh, that's right.
Oh
That's right.
yeah,
Yes.
that's cool.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So okay. So but you'd manipulate the virus, right? It wouldn't be like the raw form of it. You would genetically modify it.
Not
No.
necessarily. You could select for and enrich it.
Okay.
It's like saying, hey, that's where the good people are. Well, let's gather all of them and stick them to this part of the town. And as they populate that part of the town, for example, like Vikram and family, then we actually got a part of Lubbock that is really cool with all the pictures.
No, that makes sense. No, that's awesome. I like that, and I don't want to take y'all any longer than this, guys. I know y'all have a place to go. Vikram is probably still at his office.
Oh no, I'm at home now.
Oh, you are?
I'm set up at home.
All
Yeah.
Oh, my bad,
right.
dude. Nice, dude. Oh, real quick, did your
Yeah.
did your radio show get canceled, Vikram?
Yeah. Yep.
The
So
NPR one, right?
Yeah, the NPR one in the Grow got canceled.
No.
They had a
Dang.
bunch of cuts, and a lot of the producers got laid off, actually, which is super sad. And so my co-host and producer just got laid off, and it was a shocking kind of, hey, we've got a meeting this morning kind of deal. And so we actually just it was kind of sad. We just recorded our last episodes yesterday, so there's 3 more of In the Grow, and then it's gone. Now, I mean, I'm still doing Planthropology, and Rachel and I talked, or we've been kind of talking, and some of it's going to depend on what happens with her job,
Because that was her
what
full time job, right?
Oh yeah, she was full time. She produced 3 shows, 3 NPR shows, and that was her full time job. And but it went out as a podcast as well. And depending on what her future looks like, we would love to continue it as just as a podcast, but that time will tell. We don't know yet. But
Wow.
that was definitely a bummer this week.
Well, just know that you are always welcome to become a permanent member of the Garden Party, like me and Phil.
Appreciate
You can
it.
come if I know you have so much free time that you can be on multiple podcasts every single week. But real quick, Phil, let everybody know where they can find you, dude. Let everybody know what you got going on.
Hey guys, you can find me at Phil's Figs on all the social media. I got philsfigs.com. I still have some cuttings up for sale, but that will be ending soon, as a lot of my trees are down to the bare minimum for me to want to grow them this year. And reach out with any questions regarding figs and even some other plants. I grow other stuff too.
Yes, and if you didn't already, if you want to listen to a complete fig cast, last
The
week
fig
it was
cast.
just me and Phil. So me and Phil went hard in the paint on figs. So go to Spotify, go to YouTube, and listen to last week's episode. We talked about figs for basically an hour and 20 minutes. So awesome figs, and you'll have rooted figs soon, right? Too.
Yeah, I'm trying to aim for April. Last freeze here is April 1st, and I just want to make sure that it gets safely to its destination. So be cognizant when they
Gotcha.
become available, but check in April and May for lots of trees.
You need to do a pre-order so people can start banking it up.
Oh, yeah, that's a good call.
Mr. Vikram, let everybody know where they can find you, what you got coming up.
I am the plant prof. All the places, unfortunately. I may or may not be eating lemons with the rind. Who knows? The future is unknowable. My podcast, Planthropology, is back. I'm just started releasing episodes again. I had a great one last week with a game producer who...
that was a good one. I just
called...
listened to it.
Oh, awesome. Thanks. Yeah, Garden Life comes out next week, actually. And so...
Oh, you froze.
And then I've got... This is a big one I'm pretty excited about. Next week, I got to interview Dr. Catherine Hayhoe, who is a sort of world-renowned climatologist and science communicator. And so I've been trying to get her on the show for like 2.5 years.
Nice.
And finally got to talk to her. She is lovely. And that comes out on the 22nd, so a week from today. So
that's awesome.
Good stuff. And if you want to go listen to In the Grow, even though we're not making much more new episodes, there's a backlog of great content. That was a fun show, and I think a lot of the listeners of this would enjoy it.
That's awesome. No, for sure. Go follow In the Grow and go follow Planthropology. For the Josh Peck thing, to get his attention, I say you just duet that same video every day until he mentions you, and just do you eating something different.
Something weird
every
day.
Just until he notices.
Psychological warfare.
Yes, and
I'm coming for you, Josh Peck.
You have a pretty decent following. I don't see how he wouldn't notice you. Like, it's got to be that. Mr. Kevin Ong, thank you so much for coming on. Will you let everybody know where they can find you on the internet
Sure.
and if you got any events or anything coming up?
Sure, absolutely. So if you guys get a chance, check out Texas Plant Clinic, TX Plant Clinic, on Instagram, on Facebook. We usually try and be more active at it. Some of my staff would post stuff, and always check in on Wednesday, because ever so often when we get a frustrating email that is good, there will be the hashtag What Wednesdays, and you can always go back and look for stuff. And there is some really good old content which is still relevant in our YouTube, I guess, repository. That when we had a lot of fun with videos, so check out TX Plant Clinic, and yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, and if you go to their Instagram, you might scroll through and see some pictures of the print of like the problem you're having with your plant, and so
mhm.
it may save you an email just scrolling through. Because one thing we noticed when we were learning when I was talking to Hannah is everybody thinks they have the most rare, like never before seen disease, and it's usually pretty common. It's usually not that uncommon,
Yeah.
So it's definitely worth a follow. And I talked to Hannah. Y'all are going to step your social media game up, and we're going to we're going to have Hannah on too. I'll make sure to get her on
That'd
as
be
well.
good. That'd be good.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and I
Always
am
get the one that actually do the work and know what they're talking about. There
yes,
you go.
yes. You were great to have. You were great to have on, Kevin. I'd love to get you back on at some point again. I know you're a busy guy. Kevin told me I need to book him at least 60 days in advance next time.
90.
90 days.
90. All right, just do it. Okay, next 90
Yeah,
days, starting
What's
now.
90 days from now?
90 days from today, we're gonna have you back
May
on.
15th.
I'll send you an email tomorrow, Kevin. Well,
Yeah.
I'm Destin Nowak, Texas Garden Guy. You can find Texas Garden Guy on every social media platform. I've got a big event. My next event is at Enchanted Forest in Richmond, Texas. We're doing a spring garden class. And then we got March is going to be so crazy. So make sure to go to my Facebook or whatever and see my events. And I appreciate y'all hanging out. If you want to watch this on YouTube, it'll be on YouTube tomorrow. It'll be on Spotify tomorrow. It'll be on Apple Music. Go find or Apple Podcasts. Go follow the Garden Party, and I'll see y'all on the next